What's up, Liron here. Today's video has nothing to do with this painting. I just put it in the background to have something nice to look at. Today I'm going to review the M-Gram paints and set up my new palette. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video. And as I mentioned, today we'll be looking at my new M-Grams paint. I really want to say a huge shout out and thank you to Nathan who sent me this set as well as this particular tube here. So this is the 5-color set. I think it's the most basic one, not in terms of price, but in terms of the colors in it. So I'm going to show you real quick because we're going to look at this more in depth. So we've got the Ultramarine Blue, the Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Yellow Ochre, Burnt Sienna, and Sap Green, and finally Quinacridone Rust, which he sent because he personally loved this. So Nathan, thank you so much for sending me these. Now, in addition to that, we'll be setting these up in my new palette. And as I'm recording this intro after I already have done this, so this is the new palette. It's a Whiskey Painters, I believe the name of the brand. And I'm going to put links to everything in the description box below so you can find the exact same palette I'm using, as well as the paints probably. So with that being said, let's get started. I'm going to show you the paints, we're going to set up the palette, and I'm going to give a quick demo of swatches of what these paints look like. So let's get started. Step number one is to show you these M-Gram paints. I'm super excited to be opening these up. I've been stocking them for a while now on Amazon, having them on my wish list, and really looking forward to using them. Before we get started, I just want to say a huge thank you to Nathan who sent me these. I'm going to link up his Instagram as well as website in the description box below. Nathan, thank you so much. I was really looking forward to reviewing these, and quite honestly, I've been starting to feel guilty because it took me so long, but I was just waiting for the perfect timing, and now it is the timing. I got the new palette that I want to fill it up with these paints, and we can get started. So let me show you all of the paints that I've got here. I'm going to remove this. Didn't show you the back side as well. So you can pause the video and read this if you want to. And I'm going to talk about the paints that I've got here. So we have Ultramarine Blue, Burnt Sienna, Yellow Ochre, Permanent Alizarin Crimson, and Sap Green. And the last one, he was kind enough to also share me Quinacridone Rust. Nathan, again, thank you so much for sending me these. I've been really wanting to try these out for a while now, and this is a good chance to show you the tube zoomed in. Very fancy. I love the design. The way it looks. I don't know much about these. I do know they stay quite soft, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know much more than that, other than that they're really high quality. So I'm really looking forward to reviewing them. And with that being said, we can move on to the next step. Okay, so here is the palette, and I'm gonna link everything down below in the description so you'll be able to actually see the exact product. This is a whiskey palette. I know this is a brand, I believe. It's a really nice one, and as soon as I opened this and I saw this fancy packaging, I knew I had to do it together with you, and I couldn't just do it off camera. So here's a very interesting little box here. Very lightweight. It's a relatively small palette. I think it's going to be good for studio work as well as plein air painting, so I'm really stoked about that. So let's see what we've got here. Ooh, so another layer, Whiskey Painters. This is really fancy. This is the fanciest palette I've ever opened, I have to say. I have the Magello 18, which wasn't fancy, but it's just a good palette. Let's move all of these aside. So we've got this little handy bag, and I'm not gonna keep you waiting for too long. Here it is. Ooh, very nice. And it just feels really high quality just from holding it. This has a kind of a coating that makes this surface smooth. It has this ring for the thumb, which I find incredibly important, so you can hold it up like this and paint. This is why it'll be good for plein air, as I mentioned. We've got here the Whiskey Painters Private Stock. So I think this one is, I don't even remember how much I paid for it, but you'll be able to see this on Amazon with the link that I'll provide. But let's check it out. Ooh, so nice. And you can see it's a rather small one, but I do want to try and work on that inside the studio as well. what I actually think I may do is take out the half pens and put on full pens that I actually have here in a drawer. I have a couple of them, and that way it'll be better for like 5 paints or 6 paints. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then use this as a mixing area for cools and warms. Just to keep things minimalistic. I like to do that when I'm working outside, and this is going to be a nice way of doing that. So here's again a full view of the palette. It's a very tiny one, but I just love it, and I'm going to fill it up with my M-grams now. So I just wanted to show you some of the action. This palette has these two different, I don't know what you'd call these, but a metal piece that gets in between the pan and this bar here, and it prevents them from moving around too much. So I took out all of these half pans, and I'm filling it up with my full pans. And I only used I made a mistake, a miscalculation, because I can't really fit in here the full pans, so I can fit here the half pans. So what I will do probably is 2, 2, and then in the middle I'm going to put either 4 or I'm not sure, we're going to see how much fits. I think 4 can fit here. And then I'm going to play around with it, maybe same paint here, same paint here. We're going to see how that works out. So now I'm going to lock it up, and then I'm going to start filling it up. Okay, so after giving it some thought, my main concern is to get the Yellow Ochre as far away from the Ultramarine Blue, as far away from contamination into green. So I'm going to put these two probably on opposite sides. So this is going to be the Ultramarine Blue, this is going to be the Yellow Ochre. Here I'm going to put the permanent alizarin, the green, sorry. Here is going to be the permanent alizarin crimson, and burnt sienna and quinacridone rust are going to be somewhere in the middle. So we're going to start with the extremes. I'm going to start with the Ultramarine Blue. And it's always an adventure to see what the paint looks like and feels like straight out of the tube. So I'm going to open it up, and this is a very easy to open cap, unlike other brands. I also have to say it really reminds me of SAA, the tubes themselves. They're a bit more fat, and the way the cap handles, which is really nicely, is very similar. So I'm going to fill in that one, and I'm going to have to concentrate here. So here it goes. I've got the French Ultramarine in place. I tried filling it up all the way to the corners. Let me show it to you up close. I think that's large enough of a quantity for now. It's very soft straight out of the tube, which I like. So what's going to happen, probably it's going to flatten onto the surface of the pan. Which is a good thing. I like that feeling, and we'll see how much it dries, because that'll affect my ability to work with it in terms of the plein air, okay? Because it may be too soft to work in plein air, believe it or not. That can be the case if the paint doesn't dry. On the other hand, my SAA paints were really soft. One of them was really soft, and I'm still able to work with it plein air, so no problems. This one, Yellow Ochre, also very soft, and it makes sense. If I'm not mistaken, they're using honey to make the paint a little softer. So we got these two on opposite sides, and now I have to figure out, do I want, next to the yellow, I want no green. So the green is probably gonna be here, so I'm gonna place it in, and let's see what this one looks like straight out of the tube. There was a bit of a sound, probably because of the air that has been compressed there. Messed it up a bit and touched the side of the pan, but that's fine. What I will say is, because they're so soft, they immediately fill the pan with no issues. If you've been using paints like New Gamboge by Daniel Smith, you know how they're a bit more pasty, a little thicker and less like liquid. So in any case, now I'm going to put the permanent Alizarin Crimson here, but before we do that, because I'm using this corner to hold it up, I'm going to put in the other two. So now I have to think, what do I want to protect this yellow from? Because we're going to have either the Quinacridone Rust or the burnt sienna next to it. So I think between the two, that's a good question. I think I'm going to put the Quinacridone Rust next to it, okay? I just have a feeling that'll be a smarter choice, though I may be wrong. Let's see if this one's soft too. Now we have, ooh, nice. So 4 out of 4 that have been really soft. So I'm gonna fill up, this one's a bit harder, I can tell. And so I'm gonna fill it up like that. I'm fine with a bit of gaps on the sides. I'm not too, really, as long as I can paint, I'm fine. So I don't worry about or obsess about these things. So we've got this one, Quinacridone Rust. I messed it up just a little bit with the cap here, as you can hopefully see, but hopefully nothing will get super dirty by it. Now we're going to put in the burnt sienna on the two to the left. And what I love about the palette I'm getting here is that it's very natural. So there aren't any too vibrant greens, and it's very soft. It'll be great for different types of landscapes and so on, which is what I'm really excited about doing with this palette. So it'll be a really handy one. I just need to figure out the last piece of the puzzle, which is it going to dry enough so that I can actually carry this around me. So next up is the last one, Permanent Alizarin Crimson. Probably going to be really soft as well. I know this because the SAA one is super soft as well. I'm going to fill up that last pen. Beautiful, beautiful color. Wow, that's a really nice red. And I have to say, and I'm going to hold up the palette up close to the camera. I'm going to put all of these back in neatly here. I want you to check it out up close. This is just beautiful. I love this combination. I love everything about it. Now I'm already seeing the blue running out really fast, so I may decide in the future to convert maybe two of these pens into blue. So I'm gonna have blue, 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 and then just burnt sienna or just Quinacridone Rust. Nathan did recommend I try it out because he loves the Quinacridone Rust, find it very useful. So I will give it a try, of course, and we'll see how that goes. So very tiny mixing spaces, and with these kinds of mixing spaces, it's best to focus on warm and cool colors. So just saving one for cool, maybe blue, and then one for warmer colors, so the red and yellow and all of that on the other side. Really keeps you minimalistic. Maybe even, you know, limit the painting to just two colors. So maybe these two even, everything could work. So now what we're gonna do is the best part, which is the demo. I'm just gonna demo what these look like, okay? I'm not gonna go into too many details or a detailed painting. I just wanna show you what these paints look like. Okay, so just to make sure that I don't miss anything, I wrote down everything I want to try with these M-grams. So first off, we're going to swatch everything up. Then we're going to do some secondary mixes. And finally, we're going to test out warm and cool. And the last swatch that I forgot to mention should say grays. Okay, so we're going to test out some gray combinations. So let's start with the yellow ochre. The reason I'm starting with that is that I don't want to contaminate it. So I'm going to pick up some of the yellow ochre, and I can see that it's very soft, as expected. It's also my first time using this palette, so it's going to be interesting to see how the paint, you see it beads up. That's often the case with new palettes. So what you want to do is, sometimes some people like to scratch the surface. I like to just use it normally until it kind of settles. So let's see what this looks like. It's a beautiful paint, and I've been doing some reading in between the takes and recording this video, and I read that the M-grams are considered very highly pigmented, beautiful colors, and so I can really say that based on this one at least, that is the case. Just a beautiful paint. I'm going to try dropping in some when it really spreads out nicely. That's really interesting. So I just used very thick paint here and dropped it onto there. So next up, we're going to try out the burnt sienna. And we're kind of going from warm to cool, and I'm going to make sure I have a little piece of paper to make sure that I completely clean the brush. I'll also be making a separation with my water wells between warms and cools. So the burnt sienna is what we have here on the left. And I'm just a bit timid because it's my first time using this palette and these paints. So I'm less aggressive. I kind of want to keep it looking nice for a while. So we'll see about that. Let's first use a rather watered down version of the paint. Beautiful. And it's not one of those more orange-ish burnt siennas, it appears. So more reminds me of Daniel Smith's rather than Schminke. And you know I love the Schminke burnt sienna. But still a beautiful one, and it works really well, I think, with the yellow ochre. Let's try and get it to be a little darker and see what we get. And finally, I'm gonna use it like straight out of the pen. Drop it in here wet and see how dark we can go. This seems to go pretty dark, so if you mix this with, let's say, like we're gonna do here with French Ultramarine or something like that, you'll probably get a decent dark value. So now I'm gonna clean up the palette because I do want to show you each paint purely. If it was just for me and for a painting I work on, I honestly wouldn't have minded it this much. So now we're gonna do the Quinacridone Rust. And this one's a little less softer, and this one is orangey. So I saw it when I cleaned the cap of the palette. This one's more similar to Quinacridone Burnt Orange by Daniel Smith. A beautiful, beautiful strong paint. This is more similar to Schminke's Burnt Sienna. So I may end up using that even instead of the burnt Sienna here is a little more brown, a little too brown for my taste. Still beautiful, and it's really a matter of personal choice, but with this one you see it gets even darker, which is a big advantage. I'm gonna zoom in just a bit because I can, and that way you can better see all of the details. So that's interesting. Next up we're gonna do the Alizarin Crimson Permanent, and for this one I'm gonna wipe it clean as well. And I'm sorry, a lot of people are really against wasting paint in that way. I don't mind that, and I'll probably, if I like these, I'll probably end up buying more. So I'm really okay with wasting quote-unquote paint, because on the other hand, I save up quite a lot of paint. I do use the leftovers of my palette for different gray elements, so I'm fine with that. I don't really mind that. And because, again, this is a pure demonstration, so I really want to show you the pure version of these paints. And you can see here. Maybe I'll get one swatch closed up nicely. Very, very impressive. I love this paint. Now, honestly, I feel like it will be a waste to dump that Alizarin Crimson, so I'm going to do the Yellow Ochre next. I'm going to get rid of it. I also could have brought up an extra plate, but that's fine. Now I'm going to do the Sap Green. There's a bit of Yellow Ochre, but it's going to disappear in just a few moments. I wonder how staining these are. I did read that they're quite staining, and if that's the case, then this palette is going to be doomed really soon. But that's fine. I don't mind that. It's all a learning experience, and I'm actually happy that I get the chance to try these out and learn if I like them. Because if I do, then I'm going to be using them for multiple different palettes as well. Now, I made a silly mistake, and I didn't put in the French Ultramarine. I noticed this only after I finished sketching out the rectangle. So what I'm going to do is just put the French Ultramarine in the gaps, and I'm fine with giving less attention to the French Ultramarine because I usually put way too much attention on it. So you know what, we can just move on to the warm and cool. So I'm going to start with this cool side using a French Ultramarine, and then we can alternate, maybe switch to the permanent Alizarin Crimson we have here. That way we won't let it go to waste. We don't have to do that with the burnt sienna, so let's do that. So a bit of a cool paint here, and now slowly I'm going to introduce a bit of this into the mixture, and we'll see how that, or what that looks like. And I could add a bit of water just to get things moving around a little. I always like to try new things that I'm not sure will work. So right now I just dumped the brush onto the water bucket and brought the water onto the paper. This is something I don't usually do, but I will sacrifice the temporary specific result to get a better impression or to learn something new, let's say. So I'm very happy with that. Now we have this green swatch, and for that we're gonna mix up some blue, and I'm gonna do it really, you know what, I'm gonna do it really haphazardly, if that's the word, I don't know. Like, I'm just gonna go for it. What I do want to make sure is that I clean my brush thoroughly for the Yellow Ochre. So it seems to be pretty clean now, and I can pick up some of that. And we're gonna let it mix on the paper. And I love to do it this way because that way you can see both the individual paints and their mixture. And I'm just gonna add a bit more blue here to the mix. And you can see, and this is really the greatness of this kind of palette, and what I was commenting on earlier, is that it's really a natural colors that mix naturally. This is more of a muted, dead green. Sorry, I forgot the word. Which is much more natural than if you'd say use sap green. I'm going to add a bit of sap green here. You'll see it's a bit more artificial. This green is really natural and it feels natural, and when you play around with the different values, you're going to get a very nice result going from light to dark. So I'm really pleased with what this looks like. Let's add a bit of thicker paint here. You know what? No, I don't want to add thicker paint. Let's add a bit of water into the mix. Let's let it mix on paper. And this goes to show you how important it is to be using a good paper, because a bad paper would have never been able to handle this much of a, you know, water and then paint and then more water, and it would just have been impossible. So there you go. A bit of green, very neutral, which is good. Next up, we're going to do the orange. So for the orange, we're going to need some yellow ochre, obviously. Like so, and I'm going to do this a little wetter. So a little yellow ochre, and to that we're going to add some of the permanent Alizarin Crimson, and we'll just see what kind of an orange we get here. Kind of similar, you know, we already have an orange, basically, the Quinacridone Rust. But just to give it a go and see what we'll get. And notice how the paint really flows, which is something I really noticed with these ones in particular. It flows beautifully. So next up we have purple, and we already have a bit of purple here. Because we mixed these two together, they kind of complement each other, but then also neutralize each other a bit. So I want to try something here. So this is the French Ultramarine and the permanent Alizarin Crimson. I want to see what happens if we're going to use the French Ultramarine, or Ultramarine Blue rather, together with the Quinacridone Rust. Let's see what that'll give us. So almost a gray, because this is orange, so obviously it wouldn't produce a purple. I'm just experimenting here and having fun. And last up, I want to try some grays. So to do the grays, I'm just going to mix everything we've had so far. I'm going to even put in the sap green. I don't mind that. We're going to add a bit of blue here. And then to this mixture, we're going to add a bit of the permanent. Now you see the permanent Alizarin Crimson is really dominant, so you have to be careful with that. So no more of that. I'm not going to add it at all. Just going to add a bit of blue, and we'll try to slowly move this towards gray. So for that, now all we have to do is add a bit of yellow to the mixture. And you see it starts to gray out a little. These are so strong that honestly I'm having a hard time neutralizing, you know. Let's try a bit more blue. I'm just trying not to contaminate them while I do this. So a bit more blue, very tiny bit of permanent Alizarin Crimson, and now also a very tiny bit of yellow ochre. And it starts to gray out just a little bit, you see here. We're getting a bit of a gray or muted color, so hopefully that gives you a better idea of what it looks like. I'm gonna grab this palette in my hand and try and do it better this time, because I really want to produce a more grayish gray. So I'm gonna start with the yellow ochre, on which I'm scared for the most. I'm gonna add a bit of water to that. Next up, I'm gonna get some of that. This is super dominant. This is really a dominant color, as you can see. Then we're gonna add some of the blue, and probably end up needing more yellow. So now we're getting it to be a bit darker, which will make it easier to mix a grayish color. So kind of the same thing, really. I'm having a bit of a challenge graying it out, but here we go. So we got something that's a little closer to gray. So let me show you now everything we did together, just so that you can enjoy the final result. So here we go. We did all the swatches. Here you can see the Ultramarine Blue. We've got some gray, orange, purple. I'm gonna hold it up a little closer so that you can see the details. These mix beautifully. We also got to see the importance of having good paper, which is really important for this kind of thing. And I really hope you enjoyed this one. I think, funny enough, the sap green is one I will barely use, but we'll see about that. Maybe it will be a supplemental green. But it is good learning what these look like and how they work, because I may change some things around with this palette. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this little review, palette setup, and demo, and we can now wrap up the video. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed seeing these paints. As for the final results here, beautiful, beautiful paints that I really enjoyed testing out. And now I have this nice palette that I'm gonna probably be using outside. After giving these a while to dry and make sure that they do dry properly, just being a little careful, it's still wet, the paint here. I love how these look, the way they look together, and the basicness of this kind of palette, okay? I'm really a big fan of the limited palette, and these are all very natural looking paints. So the Yellow Ochre and French Ultramarine are a very common mix to create neutral and natural greens, really. So I'm very, very excited about that. Also got the burnt Sienna, so if I want to do some warm and cool plays, a very classic, I guess, would be a Velasquez palette. And this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. Let me know in a comment below what you thought of this, if there's anything you want to see more of, or if there's anything you want me to cover more in depth. If you've been following me on Instagram, you've seen all of this setup process live and me testing out the paints. So if you're still not following me there, I highly recommend you do. The link's going to be in the description box. It's going to be Liron Yan IL. And in addition to that, and I haven't mentioned my drawing course in a while, so if you need help with the drawing part of things, I have several drawing courses. I'm going to link the most important one in the description box. It's going to be like the first link, so be sure to check that out. Remember, drawing is important for most people, I think, for painting. Not all, you can get away with it, and I do think there are many different approaches. For me personally, drawing is a must, and so if you feel like you want to improve your drawing skills, check it out in the description box below. Thank you so much, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.